There you go. So much better. Alright guys, so round 3 action of 4 rounds of Swiss tonight from the Standard FNM at Lost Legion Games and Comics in South Charleston, West Virginia. My name, as always, is Zachary Evans. I'm here by myself currently. I'm sure someone else will just join in as their round finishes up. On the left, we've got Troy King. He's playing a red-green devotion, basically a big red devotion deck that splashes green for planeswalkers in the form of Domri and Xenagos, as well occasionally as a couple copies of the Xenagod. His opponent, Garrett Meadows, we saw him last round lose to the Naya Planeswalkers deck of Alec Myers. He's still on the blue-white-red control deck. Standard blue-white cards, but splashing red for Karanos, Turn and Burn, and Mizium Mortars. So here we see a turn 3 Burning Tree Emissary chaining into a Domri. It's going to tick up, miss a draw off the top, but still a lot of pressure from Troy's deck. Going to need to find an O-ring effect for the Domri. But his deck probably plays 5 of them. And there is a Detention Sphere just in time to answer the Planeswalker. So Troy goes back to rebuilding his board state. Going to start off with the Scry from a Temple of Abandon. So Troy's serving in with the Domri, with the Domri, for goodness sakes, the Burning Tree Emissary, but no business to follow up with Devotion Seal 2, so can't turn a profit off that Nykthos. Meanwhile, Garrett finds his 4th land and plays a Jace Architect of Thought, which ticks up to keep that Burning Tree honest. Question in the chat about why could Troy have played that Burning Tree into the Domri. I'm pretty sure he could have. Cast a Burning Tree for the red and the green and then tapped his Nykthos for colorless to cast a Domri. So I'm not sure what was the question there. He didn't activate his Nykthos, he just cast it the old-fashioned way. So serve in with Burning Tree, attack at Garrett's life total just for 1 because of the delayed Jace trigger, followed up with a Boros Reckoner. So we're going to draw with Jace, Turn and Burn, Elspeth, and a Hallowed Fountain. So I think you give Garrett the land and the... I think you want to give him, as bad as it seems, I think you give him land Elspeth versus Turn and Burn. Because he's going to lean pretty heavy on that Boros Reckoner to provide any damage here. So he's giving him both the Turn and Burn and the mana he needs to fuse it. So that's probably a mistake, but Elspeth is a heck of a Magic card. I can't fault Troy for not wanting to give Garrett easy access to it. Wow, Garrett's not even going to go for it this turn. He's going to play a Temple, scry a card to the bottom, and just cast a Verdict. That's also a card that he could have. So now Troy looks like... Now Troy's play looks much better as some Verdict followed by... and Elspeth would be very difficult for him to come back for here. But he's going to be up against it regardless here. Drawing a lot of land, has no real business, needs to start finding Storm Breaths and finding them fast. And right on cue, Troy does find a Storm Breath Dragon. That's going to go ahead and serve in, take out the Jace. Storm Breath, of course, pro-white being very relevant at this point, as he's not going to be able to... Not going to be able to O-Ring, or I should say Banishing Light, or D-Sphere it. Here's 4 mana for a replacement Jace. He's going to immediately dig for cards. Rev, D-Sphere, and Land. Probably go D-Sphere, Land versus the Rev here. Rev not nearly as brutal when Garrett only has 6 mana available, but that D-Sphere is not necessarily a threat at this point. This will be interesting to see what Troy chooses to do here. Garrett laying the 2 cards that Troy knows about off to the side there, just as some casual sportsmanship, rather than Troy have to write it down. Garrett plays another land from his hand. Looks like he's shocking himself here for a Mizzium Mortars on the Dragon. So Garrett, all answers all the time. Quite a stark contrast from his matchup last round with the Naya Planeswalkers deck, as Garrett has plenty of answers in this game. And Troy really doesn't have the deck that can gain any kind of card advantage, save for some Dom reactivations. So Troy taps 2 mana for an Ash Zealot. It serves in, takes out the Jace. No delayed trigger since we did minus Jace last turn. 2 more mana for a Burning Tree Emissary. We can now activate that Nykthos for 4, which we do. And then we play a Boros Reckoner. So playing into a Verdict here, but absent a Verdict, a considerable clock there. And then Troy immediately punished for taking advantage of his explosive mana, as a Verdict does immediately sweep the board, leave Troy with just 1 card in hand. And we know Garrett has that Rev, so he's going to be able to untap and reload here. So this game likely over at this point. Garrett plays a Hollowed Fountain tapped and feels like this is a good enough time to go ahead and start attacking with Mutavault. Troy is tapped out, and there's no real reason to leave it back. Mutavault's in this deck mostly just to attack Planeswalkers. Garrett just plays his land and passes back, so we're likely going to see the Rev here. Attacks in for 2, dropping Garrett down to 13, but he taps out for the Revelation we know about. Looks like it's for 5, puts him back to 18, but more importantly, refills his hand with business. I think he has drawn the Aetherling. And again, just to reiterate the cards laying off to the side there, cards that are known to Troy, Garrett just polite enough to leave them revealed. They are still in his hand, but they have been revealed off Jace -2 splits. So just some sportsmanship here. And Troy has seen enough. He draws a card, but it's going to be impossible for him to Alright guys, so game 2 underway here. Troy on the left. He's down a game. His red-green devotion deck just could not get out of the gates fast enough, and Garrett had multiple Supreme Verdicts and finished him off with an Aetherling out of his blue-white-red control deck. He's on the play. He's on a Malta 6, and he's going to need to try and come back from things here. Looks like some shortcutting here, some confusion about where we are exactly, but Troy not have a 2-drop, doesn't have a Burning Tree Chain. Here's an Ash Zealot, it looks like. Met immediately with an Izzet Charm from Garrett. Oh, I'm going to have to turn that off. There is a Ralzeric. It's super fun. I think Garrett just plays the one of them, but it does have some... he doesn't get to cast free lightning bolts, and everybody likes to do that. So 3 mana from Troy here. Let's see what his plan is. Looks like a Mistcutter Hydra for 2. Nope, we're going to chain a Nykthos here just for the land drop. Play a Mistcutter for 3. Keep that Ralzeric honest. It's important here because now if Garrett wants to use the -2 on Ralzeric to answer the Mistcutter, he's going to have to bin his Planeswalker, so unlikely that he's going to be willing to do that, but also unlikely that Garrett doesn't have some other form of answer to the 3/3. Oh, I believe the question in the chat, where are we from? This is Being broadcast from the broom closet in the back of Lost Legion Games and Comics in South Charleston, West Virginia, here in the good old US of A. Super Friends now assembled as Rouse Eric is joined by Jace, Architect of Thought, which immediately -2s. Garrett shocks himself with a steam vents, plays a Mizzy Mortars to clear out Troy's board. So Troy up against it drastically here. It'll be very difficult for him to claw back out of this situation. 3 mana for Boros Reckoner, which does provide him enough devotion to at least make colored mana out of his Nykthos. Can't turn a profit yet, but again, very unlikely that the D-Sphere in Garrett's hand is not going to immediately be cast targeting the Boros Reckoner. Garrett well and truly in control of this game. Jace hits the bin with the -2, revealing Mortars. 2 lands, one of which is a Mutavault. While Troy thinks this over, we got the roll call in the chat. 181 of you watching live. We appreciate all of your patronage. Viewers already mentioned from here in the US, Setsuko watching from Japan, Germany. Alpha Hennis, I believe. I could have been pronouncing that way wrong. One viewer earlier from Amsterdam from the Netherlands, I should say. Joao watching from Portugal. So the split is Mutavault versus Hallowed Fountain and the Mortars. So Garrett takes the bigger pile. So Troy trying to keep Garrett off that Mortars. There's the D-Sphere we knew about. We're going to go ahead and tick up our Rouse Eric, which effectively adds mana. Play a Temple of Enlightenment from our hand. Professor watching from Wisconsin. Viewer in Brazil, the roll call keeps coming in. I would be lying to you if I didn't say that it's literally amazing to me each and every week we do this. That number one, that 200 people or more decide to watch. But even more, that through the power of the internet, we can broadcast this all around the world. To so many interesting places, meet so many interesting people. It's quite a feat. So Verdict and Temple of Epiphany split versus an Elspeth. Garrett chooses the Elspeth. That seemed like an obvious one. That's the win condition he needs. Garrett shows what the card he shoved to the bottom was. Takes up Rouse Eric to untap something. End of turn, Destructive Revelry on the D-Sphere. Redirect that damage to Jace, so pretty good play there from Troy. Gets his Reckoner back, which is now going to have effective haste. So before the turn, we're going to scry with the Temple of Abandon, get a little bit more information here. See if we can add anything to our board. A Burning Tree here would allow us to profit off the Nykthos, as Garrett shows him the Mortars and the Elspeth that he knows about from the Jace split there. So Fanatic of Mogus comes down. If it resolves, it's going to be good for 4 points of damage to something. Interesting that we do it to Garrett and not to Rouse Eric. So Zarek down to 2 there as the roll call keeps coming in. Another Brazil. New Jersey, Ohio, New Mexico, Portugal, as expect. The Hufflepuff dormitory from Hogwarts. Very nice. Another American viewer from Australia as well. Disco Havoc, that's also the early frontrunner for Twitch username of the night. Disco Havoc, I like it. So there's a verdict. That's the reason the Fnatic was around to resolve, and Garrett showing a very interesting interaction between Rouse Eric and Ratchet Bomb. Tap Ratchet Bomb, immediately untap it with the Rouse Eric. Troy finds another land. 4 mana 4. A Naked Fanatic of Magus. A 4 mana zap on a 4/2. Redirect that damage to Ralzeric. Ratchet Bomb ticks up, and we know Garrett has an Elspeth. So there is an Elspeth. That's the end game for the control deck. Find a Planeswalker, make tokens, win with dudes. There are Garrett's hilarious Garrett tokens. They're going to serve as soldiers. Troy King's deck trying to power out fast creatures by abusing Nykthos and the devotion mechanic, just coming up short here, as Garrett's deck just has too much removal. So there's Ralzeric. It bolts the Fanatic. Make more tokens with Elspeth. Troy's going to take a draw and likely just pass the turn back. Nope, he's had enough here. Bunch more lands on top. There's the Nyx Fleece Ram Garrett shows him. So much like in last round where Garrett's deck struggled mightily against the Naya Planeswalkers deck because it's a very difficult matchup for him, in this matchup